to the computer. Terrific. All right, great. Thank you, Deborah, for reminding me of that. So welcome again, everyone. I think we're in the seventh inning. I'm going to use sports metaphors as much as I can because Joel just told us he's not into sports. And I think maybe we'll have two more sessions. If we might go into extra innings, so we'll see about that. As for those of you who were here last time, this is my friend Joel Segel, who is in a smaller font, if you can see, than Reb Zalman is at the bottom of the page. But hopefully Joel will shed some light on both the content and perhaps some background as we go on. And I'm going to be right with you, listening and popping in with a little bit of my shtuyot as we go on too. Alrighty, any good questions before we start? Yes, Rachel. You're muted. I'll unmute you. Go ahead, talk.
Oh, am I muted?
Not anymore, you're not.
Oh, okay. Yes, today was the Memorial Day of the Israel war death, and it started last night. And my brother and cousin died in the wars of Israel. Wow. My brother in 47 and 48, and my cousin in 67. So, you're right when you say that the mitzvah liot besimcha, because in Judaism it says that happiness and sadness come together, and then we get rid of the sadness and we be happy. So now it's the Independence Day. It started. So after that, we're all sad, and then after that we're very happy. So.
Thank you, Rachel, for sharing that with us.
And if I can add in, I was there in 16, 17, 18, and 19 for those holidays. And it's amazing how it goes from, like you said, Rachel, sadness and, remembrance to what a party. It's like right at sunset, it changes. And the radio stations can only play somber music all day on Yom Ha'atzmaut.
No, Yom HaZikaron.
I mean, Yom HaZikaron.
Right.
So when I'll have a nice surprise for you to close us out, our Chatima tonight, in celebration of Yom Ha'atzmaut. Okay. All righty. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. I'm sorry. Joel, how should we begin?
Well, I thought, it's a nice, Rachel picked up on it and other people. But you mentioned the Reb Nachman song, when he says, mitzvah liot besimcha tamid, it's a mitzvah to be in happiness always. And so, Renee would say, Mark, what do you mean happy always, right? If she's more the Eeyore type. But I think that what Reb Nachman was probably talked about was he didn't mean like we should all be happy and smiling all the time, right? He was talking about a deeper sense of joy and of connection. And that's in some ways what Reb Zalman was about, what this book and his other books are about, and what this chapter is about, is how to really find deeper ways of connecting so that you can feel a deep sense of joy, even though you may be mourning the loss of somebody, even though, maybe you've had a bad day, but you're connected to a deeper sense of joy. It's not a Pollyanna thing, it's not a surface simcha. And I think that, of course, Reb Mark knows that, and you all know that, but it's worth remembering. And that's what we're looking at mitzvah for. So, all right, Mark. So I guess I'll start, and you'll jump in with the color.
Yeah. There you go, Joel. Okay. You're catching on.
Now, let me ask you a question. Do people raise hands on chat? Because I'm not following that. If people are, then maybe you'll follow.
We only have one screen. So if anybody wants to say something, they can just unmute themselves and, at an appropriate time and add their 2 shekels.
Okay. So let me start off just by reading a couple of paragraphs right from the top. So if you have it on Kindle, it's right under, it's right at the beginning. Today we are all Jews by choice. Everybody have that? If you don't have it, let me know. Okay. Today we are all Jews by choice. Usually we say this of those who undertake the great transformative journey of converting. But if we look a little bit deeper, in an open society, we're all Jews by choice. We no longer live in the shtetl where everyone knew how often we went to synagogue, and the pressure to conform to a certain level of piety was enormous. So for example, if you live in a deeply religious area, they might say to you, oh, Mark, I didn't see you at Mincha, everything okay? You're sick, God forbid, that kind of thing. We don't live there. We no longer subscribe to the classic model of divine reward and punishment. Nobody is looking over our shoulders. We are completely free to decide whether and to what extent we want to make Judaism part of our lives. Who is, I didn't hear
That was
that.
somebody who needed to be muted, and I took care of it.
Oh, sorry.
Not a problem.
On the other hand,
Quick,
second paragraph.
Joel, let me just pop in and saying that
Sure.
who is Reb Zalman talking to?
I think that this is actually a profound observation that he's making. We're not, classically speaking, halachic Jews, right? We do not, most of the people here, I would hazard a guess, we do not run every aspect of our lives according to what the rabbinate tells us to do. So we are not, and it's a profound shift between a Judaism of obligation. I do this because I'm obliged to do it. My wife asked my brother one time, do you guys do all this stuff because you believe God told you to do it? He said, well, yeah, but we do it because that's what we do. The strict. For us, for free Jews, you might say, I don't want to say liberal because that's a political term. Everything is a choice. We can do it, we cannot do it. The shift that creates is from a Judaism of obligation to what Reb Zalman realized is we have to be in the invitation business, not in the obligation business. If I say, you have to do this because the rabbi said, that's not going to move anybody. If I say, come and do this because it's a beautiful thing and it makes an opportunity to really connect and have a sense of joy, you might give me the time of day. So that's what I think Reb Zalman and Reb Shlomo and many others realized is what a profound shift that is. But there's a challenge associated with it, which he goes to the second paragraph. On the other hand, this freedom puts the ball in our court. No one, no rabbi, no therapist, no guru can take responsibility for our spiritual lives. We have to do that ourselves. If I want to feel a spiritual presence in my life, I can't wait until all the evidence is in about whether God exists or not. I have to begin with an affirmation, a declaration, as it were, of what's important to me. I have to make a leap. The promise of Judaism or any spiritual system is that if we make that leap, things will begin to open up for us. Transformation will start to happen. I'll read one more sentence. The leap that Judaism asks us to make is not a leap of faith, but a leap of action. So I want to ask, I want to pose a question. What is the difference between a leap of faith and a leap of action? Are all religions similar in the sense that it's mostly action-based? Do different religions place different emphases? It's something we're thinking about on faith versus action. We know, for example, if you flip around in the Siddur, I remember being in 7th grade and I was bored during the davening. So I was looking around in the Siddur for something I hadn't read yet. And I came across Maimonides' 13 Principles of Faith. You guys know those? Ani ma'amin, I believe this, I believe that. And the last one, I think, is the famous song, Ani ma'amin, Ani ma'amin. I believe in the coming of the Messiah with perfect faith. Well, if we really asked ourselves those questions, we might not do so well. Because we're not a faith-based religion. Judaism does not stop you at the door. There are religions that do. I think it's fair to say that in certain Christian, denominations, faith is very, very important. What you believe is very, very important. They spent centuries thrashing out exactly what do we believe. Judaism, we're not worried about that. The only thing we care about is what you do. Your conscience is your own business. So what he's talking about here is a characterization of Judaism and an understanding of Judaism that we are an action-based religion. We are not a faith-based religion. That's reflected, by the way, Dan, let me get to you in a second. That's reflected, by the way, in Hebrew. I had a guy once ask me, a pastor, he said to me, I had about 5 minutes. He said, tell me about the Hebrew language on one foot. So what do you say to a guy like that? So I thought for a second and I said, well, in Hebrew, biblical Hebrew especially, if you really want to get to what's going on, follow the verbs. The verbs tell you what people do. You remember that famous sentence about Esav after he ate of the lentil soup? What is it? Vayochal, vayesht, vayakom, vayelech, vayivez Esav et habechorav. He ate and he drank and he got up and he left and he scorned the birthright. Why do I mention that? Only because the sentence, 5 out of the 5 words out of that simple sentence is verbs. He did this, he did that, he did this, he did that. What do we know about his inner state? It does actually tell us at the end, but usually it doesn't. What we're interested in is what people do. Dan Glazer, you had a question?
Yeah, so I get the idea about action versus faith. And yet, on the other hand, the whole point here is he's talking about spirituality. And is the implication that you will experience spirituality through action?
Does this guy always ask such good questions, or is this just his, a lucky day?
Just a
There
lucky day.
was one more. Mary Rita, do you have your hand up?
I didn't, in the sense that it didn't feel like an either or. It felt like the spirituality grounded is the springboard for like my practice. And, whether it's a spiritual practice, well, they're all spiritual practices. So it doesn't feel like an either or. In Catholicism, it does feel like an either or, but in Judaism, it doesn't. It feels like it flows, that the spirituality grounds what I do and how I practice and how I live.
Okay, so both.
My verbing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So both you guys are talking in a sense about what is the connection between our actions, our religious actions, our Jewish actions, and spirituality. So is that the right way to pronounce your name, Mary Rita? Yeah.
You got it. Yeah.
So Mary Rita says it starts from a spiritual foundation. Did I understand that right? Dan says, what's the connection between the two of them? I would say that Judaism would say, yeah, if you've got the spiritual foundation, that's wonderful. But if you want to get there, start doing. And Dan, I think the answer to your question for us is yes, that the way to spirituality, and that's a very loaded word, right? So we could talk for the whole session about what exactly that means. But the way to deep connection, the way to something that really affects you on multiple layers, for us, is largely a matter of action, including, by the way, Torah study, which is, of course, a very internal and dialogue-based and all that thing. It's not only that we're doing things, that we're going around and scrubbing the chametz off the refrigerator. It's many different areas. But I think if Judaism had to choose, it would say action first, spirituality will follow.
That's all. Can I just?
Yeah, just a follow up from Dan. Yeah.
Follow-up question. That would be, in a sense, leading to the more orthodox thing that you referred to as we do it because we do it. And we do all these things. And from what you said, that will lead to, or could lead to, a spirituality experience. So I'm wondering whether it's the actions or whether it's the choosing.
If we decide to keep Shabbat, okay, we make a decision to keep Shabbat. An Orthodox person can make a decision to keep Shabbat, and I can make a decision to keep Shabbat. but it's not exactly the same thing. Even if we do it the same, one person is doing it because he believes that this is the law and he has to follow the law. And the other person is taking it upon themselves to do something. I want you guys to think about something for a second. You know the word mitzvah, yes?
Yeah.
Think about these words: mitzvah, midrash, mishnah, mikra, which is sort of a word for, they say bamikra in the holy texts. All of those words are nouns. They all sound the same, right? They all have those same vowelification. That's definitely not a word. But midrash, mishnah, mikra, all those things, same sort of, mishkalim, same binyan. They're all nounifications of verbs.
Right.
Okay. Each one of those, by the way, has other possibilities for making a noun out of the verb. So mitzvah is from tziva, to command. Tzivui is a commandment, is a sort of an order, you might say. Okay. Or, midrash, like drisha is the action of that. But what do those words have in common? Midrash, mincha, mikra, mitzvah, all of those. They have, I think, in common the idea that it's a sort of a continuous thing that we do and something that we inhabit as an activity. So let's take the word midrash, for example. Midrash comes from the word darash, and some of you guys will know that means to seek or even to demand, okay? So if I have a demand of someone, he might say to me, why are you coming to me with demands? Drisha, that's a demand. Midrash is not the same thing. Midrash is an entire practice and a way of life of seeking deeper and deeper meaning. That's what mitzvah is like. Mitzvah is not just a commandment. It's a rubric of commandments and instructions and invitations and suggestions, whatever you want to call it, that we take upon ourselves like a talus. We wrap it around ourselves and we do it. There were other questions here in the middle of my screen, but Phyllis, yeah.
Unmute. Okay, yeah, hi. Thank you for all this. This is beautiful. No, I keep coming back to, and I can't cite the source, but Na'aseh v'nishma, right? We will do and we will hear. And the first, I guess the lower of the four worlds would be Asiya, right? So we start with doing, and that brings us to the higher places, I think. And in a more secular context, just do it, Nike, and build it and they will come. It's kind of like action gets you going and then it gets iterative, is what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Na'aseh v'nishma, often they give that sort of, it's almost a facile explanation, like Bnei Israel said, okay, we're signing on, no questions asked, and then afterwards we'll hear what you have to say. Yeah, but there's a deeper element, I think, of that, and that is that in some ways an answer to Dan's question. It's a promise. If we do it, then our sense is that we'll really begin to hear and to understand, but we got to do it first. You can't just sit on the sidelines at arm's length and say, okay, show me the plan and I'll see if I like it. You're not going to feel it. You're not going to make that connection. You got to first la'asot, and then you're going to lishmoa. And when we say lishmoa, we mean, right, na'aseh v'nishma, we mean a deeper hearing, not just a sort of, yes, I hear you, dear, dinner in 5 minutes, not just that, right? It's a deeper shmiya, a deeper listening. Were there other questions? Judy.
I'll just share something. About 40 or 45 years ago, I was studying, was really my first experience with studying with a rabbi. And he was a Lubavitcher. And I had no Shabbat practice. And he was questioning me about that. And ultimately what he said to me was, just light candles. Every Friday night, just light candles and see what happens. So here I am almost 50 years later. And that was the beginning of a long journey with a very simple action.
It's a wonderful thing. He didn't say to you, okay, so first we got to talk about your belief in God, right? No, go home, take 2 candles and 1 match, light a candle, do it every Friday, see what happens. Right. And as you said, you're not just lighting candles anymore, right? There's more to it than that,
And so picking up on that, Beautiful midrash. God has asked the question, given the choice between the Jewish people forgetting about you or forgetting about Shabbat, what would you have? And so, what's the answer to the question? What does God say? No, not a rhetorical question. Anybody? What does God say?
Forget
David?
about you.
What?
God says follow Shabbat.
Yeah, forget about me because Shabbat will lead to us. That's exactly the story you just shared, Judy. Thank you.
I just, my screen, hold on one second, guys. Okay. So let me read something else. This is, oh yeah, I have to tell. So the Jewish vision of spirituality, it's the sentence after the first break in the chapter. You guys have that? Oh, wait a minute, how do I make this bigger now? Sorry guys, give me a minute. There we go, okay. The Jewish vision of spirituality in action is based on mitzvot, singular mitzvah, a word usually translated as commandment, from the word tziva, tzadik vav he, commanded. But in a world without kings, in a democratic society, the word commandment has lost its power. The old understanding of being commanded was of commandments handed down on the mountain, of an authority beaming down upon us from above. Today, any sense of commandment must come from within, from inside us. Can we feel commanded without feeling coerced? That is a central question for us today. And I think that's a central question for what you might call non-halachic Jews, for free Jews. So I want to ask you guys for examples in which in your life you did something even though you might not have been crazy about the idea, but because you feel commanded somehow. What do I mean by that when I say feel commanded? I mean more in your heart than in your mind. So if I say to you, do you really believe that there's this guy with a beard up there on high who's telling you should? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in your heart or on an neshamadik level, you feel commanded. Were there things that came up in your life that you did, that you do, that you feel that way? We used to have a guy in the shuk in Rehovot where I grew up who was a seller in the shuk, and he would always yell, don't push, especially when there was nobody around his stall at all. So that I'm reminded of that a little bit with you guys. Don't all jump at once, but I'll give an easy example. Anyone here have a son? Sons? Circumcision? You guys rushed to volunteer for that one? Everybody loved that idea? Or did you? No, Mark, tell me, talk to me.
Oh, my first son? You kidding? My wife and I, we were both peripherally Jews. So while we still identified Jewish, I never went to synagogue. I was living a totally secular life. And yet, so this hits you in the face because you got to make a decision. And we weren't so sure for the same reasons that Reb Zalman talks about, especially we were having our son at home. We were having a home birth. So wait a second. We're going to invite somebody into our house 8 days later to cut off his shmekel? Like, that was a very, very tense period. I mean, not obviously, but we did decide to go to do it, perhaps on faith. I mean, that would talk about a leap of faith, but also based upon his historical circumstances as well. The old saying, my father was circumcised. And I could tell a little story about this later, about my teshuvah that I wrote that is about this very, very topic. So that was very, very difficult. Son number two, no question.
No question. Because by then the feeling commanded was already, it was established. There was no,
No, but we didn't do it out of commandedness.
yeah. What else we got, Dan?
Well, just the, the comment about being coerced versus commanded. The commandment can come from a need for belonging also. So you don't feel coerced, but you feel inside the need to belong either to a tribe, a nation, a people, a religion, a community. And therefore you make these choices to do things that connect you. You can think of that as a commandment, as opposed to coercion, I think.
Two things I want to say to that. First of all, feeling commanded and feeling coerced are two different things.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And the other thing that you said that was really beautiful is, I don't know, I haven't looked up the roots of the word. Commanded may come from mandate, same kind of thing. So we are co-manded with our fellows. We join in a group of people in which we all feel the same mandate, or we all feel similar mandates, or we all feel mandates coming from a similar source. Deborah, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to go back to the bris question you had. My husband at the time that I had 2 sons was Catholic, but we agreed that the children would be Jewish because I wanted that, and because they were Jewish, because I am Jewish. But I hadn't really been practicing for a very long time. But I knew at the time that I had 8 days to decide this, because if I didn't do it for my kids, they were never going to do it. I mean, it would be a huge thing to have to do it later. So I just went on faith that this was the right thing, and I was keeping the lineage, and I didn't know what was going to happen after that. But in that moment, I had 9 months each time to think about it. But I knew that that was the thing I had to do. And was it faith? I don't know, or tradition? I don't know. It was a combination of all those things.
Yeah, to me, that I would call that, that's the sense of what I mean of feeling commanded. It's not that, a policeman is ordering you to pull over, but it's, you feel the weight of this stuff, and also maybe the invitation, I want my son to be a member of the tribe, I want, and this is how we do it.
Right.
One more note about the word mitzvah is that it's idiomatically connected to Aramaic word savta. So when you're talking about connection, Reb Joel, you're in thinking about how, in addition to how I might have answered the question, which is what I was saying, which is what you're saying, that Deborah's saying, is that we feel connected to, right? So a mitzvah, as seen through the lens of the Aramaic, is that it is a connective. It is a connective mechanism, or a door, something you open up that connects two things, right? If you want to call that, heaven and earth, fine. If you want to call it out and in, or God and man, woman, whatever you want to call it. But you and me, how about, that Michelangelo moment, the Sistine Chapel moment. So there's a connection between those words of a mitzvah, which ask anybody, they're going to tell you it means a good deed, but that's not how we're referring to it here. That's not what we're unpacking. We're unpacking something much deeper, and we can. And the next place to go is in a mystical world, but we're not going there tonight.
Also, notice, by the way, Mark said it so beautifully. It's a good deed. Mitzvah is also a deed that one should not do. And there are sometimes deeds that we don't do also because we feel commanded. I've been married for 30 years. I'm sure there are people here who've been married for longer. And you keep the faith of that relationship, the agreement that you had, because you feel commanded. No one's telling you, there's no cop standing by my house making sure I don't, go off and run around with other people, but I feel commanded. This is something, if I get married, it's like a promise to God, in addition to my wife. It's you whatever you may feel like doing at the time, you feel commanded. You might feel You know, I don't know what all this Narishkeit is that I'm saying in Aramaic, but I'm going to say Kaddish for my dad. You know, you feel commanded to do that. You may not keep kosher, but you know, you're going through the thing with the looking for chametz in your house because you feel commanded about Pesach. Yeah. Was there another hand up? Oh, Dan.
Sorry, but it's interesting, the words that we're throwing around, commandment, obligation, I would add covenant, connection and belonging. They're all part of that same thing where you can have a feeling. I'm not so sure about commandment, but the others, you can have a feeling and it coming from the inside, like you started saying.
Absolutely, and I would absolutely include commandment in that, because that is definitely a part of so many of the feelings that we've talked about here. You and Mark both talked about that togetherness, right? The co-mandate, the tzavta in Aramaic, which means let's be together. Bonashir b'tzavta, let's sing all together. So that's as Mark said, that's not a strict grammatical relationship. It's more of a metaphoric relationship. But in Hebrew, there's so many overtones, and we want to unpack them and welcome them all. So let's go on a little bit. There's lots of stuff here, but I want to read on page, for the people who have pages, it's page 121. And you could search if you want for Ram Dass, R-A-M for Michael, space D-A-S-S, Ram Dass. Ram Dass once said that from an economic point of view, India is a developing country. From a spiritual perspective, the United States is a developing country. Western society is heavily invested in intellect, less in emotions, and very little in spirituality. Our language reveals this. We have a whole dictionary of words for reason, fantastic vocabularies and constructs with which to express our ideas. Our vocabulary of emotion is poorer, and our vocabulary of spirituality poorest of all. Open any good newspaper and you will find an article that will get your mind going, but only much more rarely do we find a contemporary piece of writing that really touches our hearts or exalts our spirits. Something that would truly touch our souls must penetrate beyond the level of day-to-day understanding, beyond the fundamental barrier of logical thinking. It is as if our souls were waiting for us, yearning for us in some inner courtyard, but the gate to that courtyard is guarded by a gatekeeper who rarely sleeps. A great deal of spiritual technology that religions have developed over time is designed to help us bypass that gatekeeper. Weighing such practices logically allows our critical faculties to judge precisely those methods that are designed to circumvent those faculties. You guys see what Reb Zalman is getting at here?
Mm-hmm.
When he, first of all, that expression spiritual technology is classic Zalman. Okay, right? Mark, I see you nodding your head. Zalman loved technology. He was big into it. He knew a lot of stuff. And he recognized that these things, these mitzvot, and so many of the things that we do, the seder and the davening and all that, is spiritual technology. What does he mean by that? If you go into your kitchen, the stove, the oven, is not an end in itself, right? If you never used it, it would have no purpose other than to put stuff on. The purpose of all that technology is to produce sustenance for your body. And the purpose of this technology is to produce substance for food, for deeper levels of ourselves. So when he says the gatekeeper, what does he mean? To get past the gatekeeper. What gatekeeper is he talking about? Guarded by a gatekeeper. Yeah, Scott, did
Talking
you?
about our logical minds, because he refers to that somewhere here, that if we just used our logic, we wouldn't get into this place of spirit.
Yeah. Right. How many times have you heard or had a conversation with, I'm going over to a friend's house this evening to study after this, and he has a 12-point-something-year-old son. And the son is saying to him, I don't want to do bar mitzvah. I don't believe in any of this. And it's not right that I should do a bar mitzvah. Why? Because a 13-year-old is a hyper-logical being, right? The young adolescents, they're very, very logical. And his logical mind is telling him, I've tested all these hypotheses about there being a God and all this, and I don't believe it. So I don't think I should do it because it doesn't fit with it doesn't accord, it doesn't make any sense, right? So you want to say to a 13-year-old, yeah, but there's faculties that you haven't developed yet. Making sense is not everything. There are some things that you absolutely, if it doesn't make sense, you don't do it. But there are other things that if it doesn't make sense, you're inclined to say, well, but sense is not all there is. You understand where he's coming from on this? You understand what he's trying to do? He's pointing out that there are many layers of ourselves, of our inner life. And the logical, analytical faculties that say, come on, you don't really believe all that stuff about ... whatever it is. That's one part of us. But we should not make the mistake of thinking that that's the only part. And what Zalman, I think, is saying here is that if you really want to go deep into yourself, if you really want to feel that sense of simchat tamid, of real joy, of being connected, you can't stop at that logical layer. Okay, so that's an important thing. And a lot of the technology, quote unquote, a lot of the things that we're talking about, these ancient mitzvot, which Zalman recognized as technology, are there in order to try to provide a roadmap for us to get to places that are not so easily accessible at all times. If someone says to you, tell me something interesting, you could probably come up with something in about a minute. If they say, make me cry, well, that's different. That takes, especially tears of joy. I want to cry tears of joy. Can you do that for me in the next 5 minutes? Well, maybe we can and maybe we can't, but it's a different place. You see what I'm saying? So, Mark, I feel like we need a color commentator here. Who got a basket?
You're doing great, Joel. I feel like I have the night off, but at the same time, I feel like I'm in a study group where I am gleaning so much because I've never heard you unpack this before. So what a joy for me. I actually used the term spiritual technology in a hashpa'ah section in a spiritual direction session today, and Reb Zalman very deeply understood that any spiritual leader needs to be have at his or her disposal spiritual technology that works for them, because the same thing that works for you, Joel, is not necessarily going to work for me. Prayer might be your thing, storytelling might be mine. In the spirit of Baal Shem Tov, that there are many paths to God. Talmud study might be your thing, and davening might be my thing, and especially in a shtibel, and you might say, "Hey, how do you daven with those people?" So there are different spiritual technologies for different people, and then we also have groups of people, and then we also have our own individual spiritual technologies that we develop over time. And I had never heard this term before. I started hanging out with Jewish renewal folks. A lot of other terms too, such as the word unpacking things, or inviting people into a meditation. So there's a whole lot of language also that goes with it, but we should be careful not to go too much up here, because that is the ultimate gatekeeper. And which brings me back full circle to hashpa'ah, to spiritual being a spiritual companion, which is one of the roles of the spiritual director, is to circumvent, is to help the companion bypass that place, that go right to the kishkis, that go right to the neshama, to the soul breath place, where you can find your center, that place where you're authentic and you're real and you're connected umbilically, always, always, always to Hashem, to God.
That's beautiful. And implicit in what you said also is, hashpa'ah, it's a deep and a difficult thing. If you say this doesn't, you said before, Mark, this doesn't work for everybody. So if I said to you, try lighting candles, as the rabbi said to Judy, that doesn't work for me. So I would want to know, maybe if I was in the spirit of what Reb Zalman is saying here, I would want to know, which mark am I talking about that it doesn't work for?
Mm-hmm.
Show me with your finger which mark. Is it this mark or is it this mark? Or is it, in the kishkas, which mark am I talking to, right? That's what Reb Zalman is saying. Be sure that when you say something isn't working for you, that you know which you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about the whole you? Are you talking about the deeper you? Are you tamu, taste it and see, try it. Try it for a year. Try it for 40 days. Zalman has a wonderful story in here about trying davening in English. For people who grew up with Hebrew, I always say reading Torah in English is like trying to read Shakespeare translated into Fortran. It doesn't have the thing, but he wanted to learn to daven in English. So he did it for 40 days. And by God, by the end of it, he was doing fine. So work for you. That in itself it's a bit of a minefield, and yet I take your point about spiritual direction is so true. It's not an idea to idea encounter any more than this book is, right? It's not only about ideas. So
there's another part to that, and I'm going to mention this because of so many of us in this room have spiritual practices of some kind, which is there's a wonderful story of Charlie Mingus, the jazz giant, and I forget the name of his saxophone player, who plays a solo in the midst of a tune. The place goes crazy, and people are standing and applauding for this person after the tune is over. And Mingus goes up and whispers in the guy's ear, "Don't play it that way ever again." So why does he say that? Because Mingus knows if we try to duplicate the spiritual technology that we've been using over and over and over and over again, it will get freeze dried, right? And he talks about that too. I'm not sure if it's in this chapter. That sometimes we just have to mix things up, and especially to go to a place that's uncomfortable for us, because that's where the great leap takes place. In the places where we're not so comfortable, we haven't, after 40 days, okay, this is my minhag, this is my custom. So don't go around looking, okay, what's next? Make that your minhag, your practice for a while, but don't get stuck there, or at least acknowledge that, wait a second, nothing much has been happening internally for a while. What can I do? Maybe I can do the same thing while I'm walking. Maybe I could do the same, you're right? Maybe the same thing, I can get up and dance while I'm doing it. How can I add a little bit of a tam, right? I keep coming back to that phrase, Joel.
Right, and also the dance between keva, the dance between a regular practice, right, which is one thing we're talking about. And then as Mark says, people daven 3 times a day. They say the Amidah 3 times a day, every single day. Yeah. And so you say, how do you make that new? So people who never daven before, you say, okay, it's important to get a sense of keva. It's important to get a sense of a practice. But people have been doing it for a long time. They say, how do I make that new? It says right there, Shiru Adonai Shir Chadash. Sing to God a new song. How are you going to do that? You sang the same song yesterday, the day before that, the day before that, the year before that, and the decade before that. How are we going to rise to that challenge and that invitation and that opportunity of singing to God a new song? There's another thing Zalman used to say. He said, I wish I had recorded all the tunes, because he tried to make up different tunes. He would sit with a little keyboard in the davening, and he would make up a little tune every day, a different tune. Shefa Goldoso, I think, does that kind of thing, singing different tunes. Shiru Adonai Shir Chadash. So it's such a wonderful dance, this practice business and this taking mitzvot upon ourselves business. So let's read something else. This is the bottom. So he says on page 123, religion is a many-layered thing. You guys can go back to that if you want, and it's talking about the kinds of things that we were talking about here. 3 categories, that's the phrase to search for. This is the last paragraph on page 123. Torah speaks of 3 categories of mitzvot: mishpatim, edot, and chukim. Loosely speaking, we might translate mishpatim as ethical commandments, injunctions that appeal to our logical or intellectual faculties. Mishpatim is from the word shafat, right? From the verb shafat, to judge. Okay, so things that in our judgment, in a way, make sense. That's the faculty we're appealing to, we're operating under. Edot, or eduyot, as the word is rendered today, are historical or witnessing commandments, which create and maintain our sense of memory and identity as a people. And chukim are ritual commandments which defy explanation or logic to strike at our very souls. He adds a caveat. He says, in truth, each type of commandment affects every faculty, but we can think of the 3 categories as penetrating ever deeper into our being. Okay, so those are the breakout, as it were, of the different kinds of mitzvot that we have. And they're different kinds of mitzvot chiefly because they are addressing different layers of ourselves, different parts of ourselves. So he starts off with acts of justice. So if you think of an act of justice, a Jewish one, what comes to mind? Quick, anyone who can think of one off the top of their head. What's a mishpat? An act that makes sense.
Giving tzedakah.
Giving tzedakah. That's a do commandment. Okay, what else?
Olam.
Tikkun olam, another do commandment. Wonderful.
Do not steal.
Don't murder people.
Don't murder, that's a don't do, right? Do not murder people. What else? Lots of, don't steal, don't, right? So many of these mitzvot that we say, yeah, that we know actually. We don't need Torah to tell us not to steal. Thank God, we've come this far. We feel like, that part of it we get.
To welcome the stranger.
To welcome the stranger. That's right. Welcome the stranger is a mishpat in the sense. Why does that seem like a mishpat?
I think about when I think of where that is. I mean, I know that it is in different parts, but it's also in Kiddushin, and it's what talks like we are a holy people, and the mishpat are our actions that help us be that holy people. And I think it's a mishpat because we are remembering that we also were strangers at one time, and maybe because for me it's so important that we welcome those who maybe others won't welcome.
So Mary Rita, what you said is beautiful, and I wanna tease it apart a little bit. One could say that there are 2 aspects of welcoming the stranger. It's a mishpat in the sense that it makes sense. Why should we welcome the stranger? Because if you're a stranger, you would want to be welcomed. And so we create an ecology, a whole ecosystem of, you can go to any shul in the world, and if you go up to the gabbai and say, I need a place to eat Shabbos dinner, guaranteed you will have a place that night, because it makes sense to do that. It's right. We want to welcome travelers. On the other hand, you also said so beautifully, it's also an edut, it's also witnessing. There's an element in which being kind and welcoming a stranger, because you yourselves were strangers in the land of Egypt, right? And in memory of that, not only because it's logical, which would be in itself sufficient. Plenty of people welcome strangers who are not Jews, right? But we have an added element of that makes it extra special for us because we're remembering, we're witnessing. It's an edut as well as a mishpat, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's mishpatim are relatively easy to understand. Let's read about Reb Zalman, of course, is interested in a learning religion, a developing religion. He's always talking about Jewish renewal is the growing edge, right? We need the center of the tree to hold fast, but we also need a growing edge. So I want to read on page 25, if you search for the word update other, okay, for people who are searching. We can update other mishpatim by adopting the strategy of the Jewish Reconstructionist movement, deconstructing the original intent of the mitzvah, then reconstructing it for the modern era. What he means by that is, those are big words, but it basically means see if we can understand why are we doing this, and then take that inner reason and apply it to our situation today. For example, in biblical times, when the average person lived in a mud brick house, they spent a great deal of time on the roof. Often they would sleep in Iraq, I read, it's wicked hot there, so that people sleep on the roofs. The Torah therefore commands us to put a parapet or railing on the roof of every house we build, that you bring not blood upon your house should any person fall from there. Okay, so you do it for safety reasons. Ma'akeh, a word that appears nowhere else in the Bible besides this verse in Deuteronomy, but today you use it in modern Hebrew, means a railing, restraint. Okay, that's the Torah commandment. Put a ma'akeh on the flat roof of your house. Now, you guys all live in the, roughly speaking, Northeast, Middle Atlantic. I would wager a guess that there aren't too many people here who have a flat roof on your house, right? So you would say, great, I don't have to worry about that one. I'm down to 612 commandments that I need to worry about. Ma'akeh, I don't need to worry about. But watch where Zalman goes with this. What does that bring to mind today? This idea of a railing for safety. Seatbelts. To the Jewish mind, the donning of a seatbelt, a restraint designed to save lives, is a mitzvah. We might even institute a blessing for such safety measures. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mitzvat ma'akeh. You commanded us to put this barrier for safety. Such a blessing would give a transpersonal or transcendent sense even to such an everyday act. Notice those two words, transpersonal. Those are both in what Mary Rita was saying. Transpersonal is between us. I make sure you're safe, you make sure I'm safe. Transcendent is something else altogether.
So how about the barrier of a mask?
Oh, beautiful. So you guys are too quick for me, okay? So skip down to the next paragraph. It says, surely we might think we're quite capable of looking out for ourselves on such a basic level without religions getting involved. And then we remember what a holy war Ralph Nader had to wage to force automobile manufacturers to install seatbelts, etc. So you would think, no, we know all this stuff already. Keep ourselves safe, keep other people safe. We don't need religion to tell us this. And yet, in the year 2020 and 2021, when it would seem obvious, right, to put on our railing, to keep ourselves safe and other people safe. No, it's a big discussion as to whether we should do this or not. And I would go so far as to say that there are people among our own people who sort of come across as the most religious, quote unquote. I don't love that term, but the most detailed and the most with the payas and we're mystified. What is it about these things that you guys don't understand? How we're not connecting here? What happened to the mitzvah of ma'akeh? You want to ask these guys, what happened to v'nishmaltem me'od lenafshotechem? You should guard your safety carefully, your health carefully. What happened to Ahavat Yisrael, to the love of Israel? What happened to all those things? It's a question. I haven't asked them yet, and I want to. So Mary Rita says so beautifully, we know this stuff already. But in the year 2020, it seems that we need urgent reminders about even the level of mishpatim. Let's see. Yeah, so he goes into
Joel,
all of this stuff. Yeah.
so that made me think of is the drush about the angel Gabriel in utero teaching us all Torah, right? And seeing from one end of the time to the other end of time, one end of the existence to the other end of existence. And then at the moment that we are born into this world, the angels give us a little zitz right here and the philtrum, and we forget it all. And we are spend the rest of our lives remembering, re-putting back together everything that we knew. But the question, I never thought about this before, was, or that Reb Zalman is inviting us, actually. It says that the angel teaches us all of Torah, but whose Torah? Because Reb Zalman is inviting us to, like he says, we're all Jews by choice, that we have to wrestle with these things and make them come to our own understanding of what the original intent of the mitzvah was, and how we can understand it and create new rituals around tasting a little bit of Shemayim, that little bit of heaven that was given to us so long ago, before there was a before. So all of these things, it's just jogging around in my mind about like the angel taught me Torah. I'm remembering a little bit of it, but now Reb Zalman gets into a lot of trouble with a lot of people. He just made up his own bracha on the previous page that you read.
No, Marquez is that's a
right. But to use it, well, I guess he's giving a different use for the same bracha. Correct.
Right.
But even that, I'm sure, would raise some eyebrows if I got into the car with my brother, who is Baal Teshuvah. Okay, so that's basically the point that I'm making is whose Torah is it? And because Reb Zalman is saying to us, listen, because we're Jews by choice, we have to think about all these things. We can't just take it for granted. And we didn't grow up with this stuff. And so it's impossible for us to do it by rote. We have to wrestle with it.
That's beautiful, Mark. And now I want to give you homework. Get in the car with your brother, make the bracha, put on the seatbelt, make the brachas, tell us what he says.
Chas v'chalila. I'll talk to you about that later, Joel. he's in Jerusalem anyway.
Yeah. Jerusalem, you definitely need a seatbelt.
Yeah.
Right.
No car, no.
But you see also the invitational part of it here, right? When they said to us, when you're outside, give people 6 feet distance. I don't know where you guys live. Around us, we live in a Jewish suburb, so it's everyone's very civilized and nice. It's a beautiful thing. You get to do something for other people that you didn't get to do before. Before COVID, we just walked around. We didn't get a chance. I would take a walk for 45 minutes. I wouldn't get to do one thing for anybody else on that walk. But now we had an opportunity, which is a mitzvah, right? We regarded it. It's also the law of the state, but it's a mitzvah to say, let me make room for you. Let me step aside so that you'll feel comfortable. That's a wonderful thing. It gives you a wonderful feeling of connectedness. It becomes a new practice in the days of COVID that's like a gift to us. There are many things that were challenging in this period, but there were also times when we got to do these things on the level of mishpat, of saying, let me do for you so that you'll do for somebody. You're not going to do it for me, you'll do it for somebody else, the next guy you pass. And so we create this whole ecology of chesed, this whole gemilut chasadim thing. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So let's look at eduyot. Let's look at edut. This is on page 128. And you could search if it gets headings, acts of witnessing. Edut is from the word meaning to witness. If mishpatim, so if you have an ed, for example, you guys may know that word. When you get married, you have edim. When you're at court, you have edim, you have witnesses. If mishpatim are acts of the here and now, an edut or eduyot, plural, is an act of memory, historical memory, communal memory, sometimes even eternal memory. Now I'm going to skip down a paragraph. On Passover, we just had Passover, so let's think about this. I bear witness to a monumental event in our mythic history, the freeing of the children of Israel from slavery in Egypt. We place ourselves in the position of enslavement once again. Chayav adam lirot atzmo kilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim, right? A person must see himself or herself as if she herself was delivered from Egypt. By avoiding leavened bread and eating what the Torah describes as the bread of impoverishment, matzah. We eat bitter herbs, dip greens in salt water, place a sacrificial bone on our seder plate, sing songs of thanks to God. We do not dispense with this mitzvah, this witnessing, merely because archaeology assured us that the Exodus never happened as described. We bear witness to liberation from slavery, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, as an eternal principle. So notice what happens here when we're talking about witness. When we say these are acts of witness, is that the same thing as saying, I want you to be a witness in court? Different, right? How so? Witness in court, if you say, okay, Stephen is going to be our witness today. Stephen, I want you to tell me exactly what you saw that evening, right? And you're relating events and sticking to the factual truth of those events. But now look what happens here. Even though the archaeologists tell us, that the Yetziat Mitzrayim never really happened that way. We say, yeah, that's fine, but that's not what this is about. This is not a history book. We're not witnessing in the sense of relating facts that happened. It's a lot deeper than that. We're bearing witness. That's different than being a witness. You see the differences here. There's a wonderful story. Eduyot generally involve ritual and often ask us to do things that are beyond the realm of common sense. I remember in 1969, I was busy getting ready for Pesach, annihilating any traces of chametz in my oven with a blowtorch, as is the custom in strictly traditional households these days, when the doorbell rang. You guys ever seen this? People go at the oven with a blowtorch, lest chas v'shalom there be a microscopic piece of chametz in their blowtorch. Who was it? Art Green. Art would later become president. You guys know him? Has he been to speak to you? Art is what my grandfather would have called a godel. He's a great scholar. Art would later become president of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, a professor at Brandeis, and dean of the Rabbinical School at Hebrew College. At that time, he was busy setting up Chaburat Shalom, one of the earliest of the grassroots davening circles that blossomed into the Chaburah movement. Art wanted to borrow the blowtorch when I was finished. In those days, we were hot on radical theology, talking about the death of the ancient names of God, how they all needed to be reconfigured. Why are we doing this? Art wondered aloud as he waited for me to finish. Aren't we radical theologians? But we both knew that, yes, we considered ourselves radical theologians, and yet Art still wanted the blowtorch to kosher his oven. The bearing of witness cannot be done lightly. What does that mean, the last sentence when he says that? So it's a nice little story, okay? Even though we're radical theologians, I still am going to take the blowtorch to annihilate any traces of chametz, because the bearing of witness cannot be done lightly. Why? Why don't we just say, oh yeah, I remember Egypt. Yes, Meira. Still
Unmute.
muted.
Unmute. Mark, you want to unmute?
Okay, I unmuted.
There you go.
Because we are witnessing history. We are witnessing the history of our people. And we have to remember that. And it's not something that you just do without thinking about it. You bring in all the prior generations. And that's the reason for doing it.
So a deeper thought and a concentration, yeah, of this.
Mhm.
Yeah, beautiful. Stephen.
Yeah, I was going back in my mind to what you said, that it's about bearing witness rather than being a factual witness like in a jury. So it's bringing our emotional part of the connection to being there versus trying to determine, did this really happen or not? It's what's been handed down over generations. And the fact that we're bearing witness to it continues the, trying to think of the word, the Hebrew words, but the passing on from generation to generation.
Oh, the dor vador, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Beautiful. Mark, did you want to jump in? Got on mute.
On the same page, Reb Zalman is talking about bearing witness to liberation, right, from slavery. And then he says in all four worlds, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, as an eternal principle. Right? So I think what's going on here is that, I just lost my train of thought, that he's talking about the Dorva Ki'ilu Hu Yatsa, that we need to experience all of this as if, and he's taking as if very seriously. That's what cannot be done lightly. In order for us to be liberated, we take on the rituals of those who came before us as if it was happening in real time right now. And do it, see how it fits and how it feels. And at the same time, the weight of the ritual that we had, that has been passed down to us, that for me is the blowtorch. That for me is what I'm going to use to make sure that I really, really jump in with both feet, that I'm not doing it halfway.
Yeah, right. Because Stephen alluded to this also. What are we looking for at the end of the day? Remember, let's go back to the beginning. We're looking for opportunities that are transformative. We're looking for opportunities to connect on a deeper level than merely an intellectual one. So if we say yes, we remember, we'll take a minute to remember the Exodus from Egypt, and then we'll go on with our day. No, that's good, right? But there's, the more you do, the more water on that stone of our inner self. So Rachel, I think it was Rachel or Rachel? Rachel mentioned that, in Israel now it's Yom HaZikaron. What happens on Yom HaZikaron? How do you know it's Yom HaZikaron in Israel? Let's say you forget. How do you know it's Yom HaZikaron in Israel? There's something that happens, and anyone who's been there never forgets it.
Sirens go off.
Sirens go off. And what happens when the sirens go off?
Everybody stops.
Yeah, you ever been on the highway when the siren goes off? In the middle of Kvish 6, in the middle of the highway, people pull over, get out of their cars, and stand by the cars. And that goes on for I think it's about 2 minutes. Okay?
Actually, they stop about a minute, they start stopping minutes beforehand and pulling off to the side. I watched it from my sister's office, and it was amazing to see the highway one below and see it happen.
Yeah,
even the train stopped. I mean, wherever they were in the tracks, one train had just left the station and then put on the brakes.
Yeah, stops, right? And that the body is telling us something. That the mind may not be full, the siren starts, so maybe we're still thinking about the dishes or supper or the balance sheet or whatever it is. But you get out of the car, you stand up, and you stand, sort of feet to, respect. Already the body is telling you something. And then you get back in your car. And maybe you turn on the radio. And what do you hear on the radio? You hear sad songs for remembering those that we have lost. People who have like Rachel's brother, people have sacrificed their lives so that we could be here driving down the highway. It all operates on deeper and deeper levels of ourselves. So the 2 minutes, the siren, that's beautiful, that's good. The music, if you can listen to some special music for that day, that's good. If you say Kaddish, that's good. If you go to the cemetery and say, you understand, it's whatever you put in, so do you get out. You don't get transformed by phoning it in, by mailing it in, by correspondence course. You get transformed by tamulu, taste it and see and go back to it and keep doing it. So I realize we're at the end of our time here,
So,
crept up on me.
yeah, so I want to be respectful of time and
Yeah.
not be a tircha to tzibur.
Yes, yes.
At the same time, I know that Michael or Phyllis, you had a comment, and then we're going to circle back around to Yom Zikaron, Yom Ha'atzmaut. We'll count the Omer, and then a special treat for Yom Ha'atzmaut, which it is right now in Israel. Michael?
The thought I had about being a witness is that it validates the experience of the person that you've witnessed. Not necessarily support it, doesn't judge it, but it was there, and you, as a pilgrim on a similar journey, just the fact that you were part of it gives it reality.
That's beautiful, Michael. And we're in some ways, Pesach, for example, gives us the opportunity. The story of the Exodus was actually transformed by the African American community. The Exodus is, we often think it's about freedom. It's not really about freedom, the truth is, if you look carefully. But in the African American community, they transformed it and it grew with them. And so we bear witness, they bear witness, and there's a togetherness that happens. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that video of that song James Taylor wrote, where you have a Jewish a cappella group and an African American group singing together. Tears. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing. So these are very deep things. Mark, I'm with your permission, I think I have to go because I have another study group in 15 minutes. So I gotta take leave of everybody.
Before you go, Joel, thank you so much on everyone's behalf. This is living proof why you need to have more than Reb and Rebbe. They need to be studying with a lot of different teachers because you get different styles and different content, whoever you study from, and then you take that away with you. So Joel, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Thanks so much for having me. I hope I get to visit you guys after post-vaccine. We'll all be together, God willing,
amen.
at some point. All right. Bless you. See you.
All righty. That was a treat, wasn't it? So let's count the Omer and then another treat. And I'll give you a little foretaste of that treat, which is that just like Rachel, you still here? Yes, you are. We're talking about the bitter and the sweet, right? So the song that we're going to hear, led by Kul Kulanu, this is a video that was made several years ago, singing Naomi Shemer's Al Kol Ela in honor of Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day, 3 years ago. But first, we'll count the Omer. I'll say the bracha, and yesterday was 17. I'm going to stay seated so I don't have to fiddle with my computer. So this is a positive mitzvah. כמו שכתוב בתורה, וספרתם ממחרת השבת, מיום אביכם את עומר התנופה, 7 שבתות דמימות תהיינה, ממחרת השבת השביעית, תספרו 50 יום. And the bracha, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו על ספירת haomer. Blessed are you, God, source of harmony, who makes us holy through your mitzvot, commanding us to count the Omer. Hayom Shmona Asar Yom, Shehem Shnei Shavuot v'Arba'a Yamim LaOmer. Today is the 18th day of the Omer, which makes 2 weeks and 4 days of the Omer. But today is Netzach Shebeteferet. Netzach is that quality, is that part of the mystical energy machine, or sometimes think of it as a pinball machine, that energy bounces around, that helps us overcome obstacles in our path so that we can succeed. It's the stick-to-itiveness, right, that we all need to keep going, right? This is Netzach Shebeteferet. Teferet is the heart place, it's the balance point between Chesed and Gevurah. So Teferet, we're in balance when we're in Teferet. So this is an invitation today to keep on keeping on, right? To endure and to try new things, perhaps, but to maintain our balance while we're doing that as well. So there's an invitation here from a wonderful book that I use in reading the Omer. It's called Counting the Omer, a Kabbalistic meditation guide. Rabbi Min Kantrowitz. Min is a musmach from Reb Zalman. She's a student, ordination from Reb Zalman. And she says the following: Netzach Sheb'Tiferet reminds us to try to develop undeveloped abilities again and again, directing our energy toward understanding our gifts and developing our potentials. Achieving any goal requires this kind of persistent action. So today, identify an undeveloped part of your inner core. I think that's a lovely, lovely kavanah, a lovely intention for today. What needs work? And take a chance, but don't get thrown off. Alrighty, my friends. So this video is a little more than 5 minutes long. I'm going to stay on until afterwards if you want to schmooze for a few minutes. If you need to go, thank you all so much for joining me and Joel tonight. It's always a pleasure again to sit in when another Rebbe, another teacher is teaching, not only for the content, but sometimes for the style, right? So Joel chose to dig in a different way than I've been doing. And I like that, the way that he did it. Of course, Joel wrote the book with Reb Zalman. So, I would hope that he would have a different approach than I. Alrighty, enjoy. Oh, why you're not seeing anything? All right, I'm gonna have to do it a different way. Give me 1 second.
It came on your screen, and if we.
Oh, it came on my screen. Okay.
But so if we do speaker view, it'll show big.
Okay, go for that. Go for there you go. Go for everybody. Put it on speaker view. Here we go. Ah, you're right.
We lost the sound, Mark.
Scott, I didn't know you were there. That's great.
Sound?
The whole thing, the video stopped. It's frozen.
Scott said you lost the sound. That's why I stopped it.
Oh.
Can you hear the sound or no?
Not now.
No, because it's not playing.
But you muted yourself by mistake, so now it's okay.
All right. If you can, I'm going to turn it back on. If you can hear it, just give me
Yeah.
It kind of brings the whole evening around full circle for me. From what you shared at the beginning, Rachel, al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar v'hamatok.
Thank you, Mark, for playing that. Is there any way we can get that?
I will put the link in. If you want it right away, send it to me. Send me a note.
It's on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Also,
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'll send you the link for the. That's a group called Kul Kolanu, and the fellow who was conducting, he's been doing this for a number of years. It started out much more modest than what you saw right there. You get people to sing with him, and he orchestrated all the songs. And you could see what a beautiful thing it turned into. I forget the name of the singer, but he's a pretty well-known Israeli singer. And of course, the song was written by Naomi Shemer, the song laureate of Israel.
I was also going to say that we were talking about the siren. If you've never been there and seen it, which I haven't, find it on YouTube. It's almost as good.
That's right. That's right. You can find that on YouTube. All right, my holy friends, thank you for sharing this beautiful, beautiful journey with me and each other. And I will see you all again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Rachel, did you hear what I said? Or did you step away?
She stepped away.
Rachel, I said that the evening. Rachel, can you hear me? Rachel, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I was saying how the evening came full circle for me from what you shared at the very, very beginning. Aledvash fellow kids, right?
Right, exactly. And I walk around the lake where I live, and I always listen to this song on my telephone. I always listen to it. It's Naomi Shemer's song, and she's the woman that wrote Jerusalem of Gold, and so it's very special. And Matityahu is the guy that conducted.
No, that's not Matisyahu.
It's not?
No, that's not Matisyahu.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. Yeah.
Really?
We can look
I
at
thought
right
it was.
now. Give me a second.
Because
I've never heard the song before, so.
You never heard this song?
No, I've never
What
heard
kind of a Jew are you?
Yeah.
Only an Israeli would yell at you for that.
I'm joking, Dan.
Okay.
Dan is used to me.
Okay, so his name is Ben Yafet.
Yeah, but I thought that didn't he change his name?
No, he says he's the third founder who creates the musical composition. Is the front man on the stage and the one with the long curly hair.
Yeah. He's amazing.
Yeah, and actually, you know what? Here is, I wonder if this particular video, yeah, if you've Googled them, you're still on, you'll find a number of other videos.
And the beauty also that the president of Israel is there. He's the one that turned the light on in the beginning. And they show his picture at the end of the song.
Yeah.
So and a lot of members of the Knesset there and their children and families. So it's very special.
All righty, my friends.
Okay.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Bye. Thank you. Good night, Neil. Good night, Dan. Good night, Esther. And good night, Rachel.
Bye.